No emergency budget after Brexit. It wasn't what the Chancellor said before the EU vote, but after it, he's changed his mind, saying the UK is strong.
Today, I want to reassure the British people and the global community that Britain is ready to confront what the future holds for us from a position of strength.
So how did Boris Johnson react to George Osborne's first appearance since Brexit, and will it help stabilise the economy?
It's clear now that Project Fear is over. There's not going to be an emergency budget. People's pensions are safe. The pound is stable. The markets are stable. And I think that's all very good news.
Also, this lunchtime.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody.
Where to start with Labour, more resignations, and now his own deputy tells Corbyn he's facing a leadership challenge. The latest on the Motherwell rollercoaster crash, 3 children are seriously injured. And a big day for British sport. Before the football, James Ward faces Djokovic at Wimbledon.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain.
Good afternoon. Nearly a fortnight ago, George Osborne said if Britain voted for Brexit, we'd need an emergency budget. Today, in his first appearance since that vote, he seemed to change his mind. A new budget is now more likely when we get a new Prime Minister in October. Boris Johnson soon reacted, saying this was now the end of Project Fear. But while the Tory infighting that was supposed to be settled with this referendum continues, the party is in much better shape than Labour, which has seen yet another morning of resignations. Lots of developments, but are we any clearer to knowing what happens next? In a moment, we'll hear from our experts, our business editor on the economy, our political correspondent on the state of the parties, and the latest too from our correspondent in Brussels. But first, here's Lewis Vaughan-Jones.
The country's top politicians filed into Downing Street this morning.
Is there a plan, Mr. Daly?
Top of their agenda, come up with a plan.
You going to stand, Mr. Daly?
The Cabinet need to work out how to get out of the EU and on what terms. They also need to find a new party leader and try to reassure the financial markets. So, step forward the Chancellor. We haven't seen him since the vote on Thursday, but today he said the government is equipped for whatever happens next.
Today, I want to reassure the British people and the global community that Britain is ready to confront what the future holds for us from a position of strength.
During the campaign, George Osborne said there would be a recession if we left the EU. The markets have already started falling. He also said there would need to be an emergency budget straight away, but he's delayed that.
I don't resile from any of the concerns I expressed during the campaign, but I fully accept the result of the referendum and will do everything I can to make it work for Britain. It is inevitable, after Thursday's vote, that Britain's economy is going to have to adjust to the new situation we find ourselves in.
This new situation is at least partly thanks to Boris Johnson, who welcomed the Chancellor's words.
It's clear now that Project Fear is over. There's not going to be an emergency budget. People's pensions are safe. The pound is stable. The markets are stable. And I think that's all very good news.
What's the mood like? Back to business. What about...
As Cabinet finished its first meeting since the referendum, ministers were keen to say they do have a grip on what happens next.
Is there a plan?
Of course there is a plan.
It's really important that people see that we are moving ahead, that we are doing plans, that we are doing preparatory work. We're not going to take the big decisions until a new Prime Minister is in place.
And who that new Prime Minister will be, just one of the questions dividing the Conservative Party.
I think the 2 clear frontrunners are obviously going to be Boris Johnson and Theresa May. And what I've been saying is I would like to see them unite to bring our party together without the need for a leadership contest, if we can possibly manage that.
That unity is going to be a challenge in a government and a country that are still split. Lewis Vaughan-Jones, ITV News, Westminster.
Our business editor, Joel Hills, was watching George Osborne's statement. Has the Chancellor said enough, Joel, to calm the markets?
No, not really, but then realistically he wasn't ever going to be in a position to be able to do that. I mean, the fact is we know that Britain's leaving the European Union. We have absolutely no idea what that means. There is a need for very strong political leadership, and until we get it, and there's no prospect immediately we will, then I think you'll continue to see instability on the financial markets. The pound this morning hit a 31-year low against the dollar. The falls weren't anything like the scale that we saw on Friday, but £1 is now worth $1.32. On the stock markets, the big fallers are the banks. Shares in Royal Bank of Scotland, the bank we own, of course, back to the levels last seen in the financial crisis. Airline shares are down. EasyJet issued a profits warning. Some of that is Brexit related, and the house builders also saw share prices fall. Taylor Wimpey. Now, before the referendum, you will recall the Chancellor was saying a vote to leave would lead to a recession, job losses, a squeeze in living standards, and a fall in house prices. He was accused of Project Fear. Boris Johnson today said Project Fear was over. Well, look at the markets. What they're very clearly is sharing the Chancellor's view.
The Chancellor also said, of course, there would be an emergency budget after Brexit. That isn't happening now. Will there be one later this year?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, once again, it's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, the Chancellor was saying that effectively the effective impact would be an economic shock of such magnitude that it would blow a £30 billion hole in the public finances, which would need to be immediately filled. He's now ultimately decided to leave that decision to his successor. Now, note, this is decision delayed. George Osborne is still of the view. He stands by every bit of analysis that he had in the run-up to the election. He still believes that there are some nasty decisions that need taking about tax rises and spending cuts.
Joel Hills, thank you. The resignations from the shadow cabinet just keep on coming. Names you may or may not know. What is clear is that the pressure on Jeremy Corbyn is piling on. Even his own deputy, Tom Watson, telling him in a crisis meeting this morning he has no authority. So can the Labour leader survive? With the latest, here's Paul Davis.
Morning, Mr. Corbyn.
Morning, Mr. Corbyn. Why are you continuing to hold on, Mr.
Good morning,
Corbyn?
everybody. Nice
Will
to
you
see
resign
you.
later
Nice
today
to see
if
you
more
all.
people leave?
Very nice to see you all.
He is still putting on a brave face, but each passing hour sees the pressure on Jeremy Corbyn grow as one by one members of his team desert him.
I said directly to Jeremy, look, you can try and hold on for grim death if you want, but it will be the death of the Labour Party. So I think we would all respect you, that history will respect you if you were to say for selfless reasons that you're going to stand aside.
The message that people in Chesterfield were sending me about the extent to which they saw Jeremy Corbyn as a barrier to voting Labour, I'm afraid was unmistakable.
Far from standing down, the Labour leader has been appointing replacements. Emily Thornberry and Diane Abbott among them. His allies say a coup by MPs can't succeed.
It'll be the party members. If the some members of the Parliamentary Labour Party want a leadership election, they can trigger that and there'll be another leadership election and the members will decide. They're the sovereign body of the party.
Tom Watson, Labour's deputy leader, who hasn't been seen in public since publishing these pictures from Glastonbury at the weekend, has met Corbyn today in crisis talks and warned him that he faces a leadership challenge. Something of a statement of the obvious as Angela Eagle, a high-profile member of the Remain campaign, joined the ever-growing list of resignations from the shadow cabinet. In these remarkable times, the coming hours will see demonstrations for and against the embattled Labour leader. A no-confidence vote could happen tomorrow. Paul Davis, ITV News.
OK, let's get reaction now from our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan. Carl, Corbyn is under incredible pressure right now. What are we likely to see from those Labour MPs who want him out?
Well, there may well be more resignations. There are, believe it or not, some people who haven't resigned. At the latest count, I think there have been 19 resignations or effective resignations from the shadow cabinet and 35 from the front bench in all, including junior ministers and parliamentary aides. What happens next? Well, Tom Watson has told Jeremy Corbyn to expect a brutal leadership challenge and quite possibly a general election shortly after that. And Mr Corbyn's team are saying, look, all this stuff about resignations, no confidence motions, or maybe a vote on that tomorrow, that's all displacement activity. The real deal is whether or not there is a leadership challenge. But I think as Tom Watson has said, there will be one, and that's when we'll get to see what the membership think. Mr Corbyn's team think they will just put him back in place. Now that creates a big problem for these rebels because they've said they're not going to serve under him. So effectively where we are is we've got a situation where Jeremy Corbyn may well face a leadership election and be put back as leader, but leader in name only, because the parliamentary party here don't think he's competent and aren't prepared to be led by him.
Goodness. And on Brexit itself, Carl, what are you hearing about how the government might actually make it happen?
Yeah, the referendum, remember that? Well, plans are underway. The Prime Minister told the Cabinet today that government did have to start making plans for Britain to leave the EU, and a unit has been set up of civil servants from the Treasury and the Foreign Office to get that work underway.
Carl Dinnan in Westminster, thank you. So detail beginning to emerge about how the government will prepare for Brexit. In Europe, though, there is disagreement between leaders on what should be done for Britain next. Our correspondent John Ray is in Brussels. What are you hearing this lunchtime, John?
Well, if it's chaos where you are, Nina, let's not forget there's a little bit bumpy in Brussels. So a question of degree. They're not tearing each other apart across Europe, but there are divisions. And broadly, it comes down to this: how fast and how far to punish the United Kingdom. The French would like it to be swift and they'd like it to be bloody, and that's because Francois Hollande faces a presidential election next year, and he doesn't want his own Eurosceptic forces at home to have any room for manoeuvre. But we've heard this lunchtime ahead of a summit in Berlin of three key nations from Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, a much more calming, a much more cautious voice. And she's saying, look, the first priority is to reassure international markets that Europe is still governable. So we need to be calm. Let's not do anything rash.
OK, that's the politics. What about the practicalities? What happens next this week? And where does Britain fit into any of those talks?
OK, so David Cameron is here tomorrow for an EU summit. What we know he won't do is trigger the beginning of the exit negotiations. That would be 2 years with a hard deadline. Deal or no deal, at the end of it, Britain would be out. And without a deal, it would be terrible for the UK. What Europe won't do is negotiate a sweet deal ahead of that triggering process. In other words, there will be consequences for Britain leaving the EU. We cannot have our Euro cake and eat it.
John Ray in Brussels, thank you. Well, since that decision to leave the EU, there's been a reported rise in hate crimes believed to be fuelled by Brexit. In West London, police are investigating racist graffiti scrawled on the front entrance of a Polish cultural centre. It has been removed, but you can see the remains of it if you look closely in yellow.
Those few people out there who feel that strongly in that way, as if they sort of, I don't know, they feel they've been given a licence to express their feelings, which is quite horrifying.
Well, that wasn't an isolated incident. In Cambridgeshire, cards with racist threats were apparently sent to homes and schools in Huntingdon. And the Muslim Council of Britain today said it recorded more than 100 cases of hate crime since the referendum result on Thursday. Well, joining me now to discuss that is Miqdad Versi from that organisation. Look, the campaigns are over for the politicians, but it seems to be that some of the anger whipped up by those campaigns has resulted in people facing absolutely hideous situations out there.
Very much so. We've had cases from Eastern Europeans who've not been allowed on the London Underground and been told to get out of here. Young Muslim girls in schools being told that they should not be there anymore. These are real worries.
Did you ever feel as if we could get to this place in this debate?
It's something that is really quite scary for many people, and it's not something that I had expected to be at this level. 100 cases within a couple of days of just those that I have seen. Just imagine those which I have not seen and how many are taking place across the country.
Calls for unity, of course, from all sides of this debate. That's not actually happening in reality. So do you fear that these attacks, these kinds of attacks, will escalate now?
There is that risk, and that's why we very much welcome the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the Commissioner coming out and saying that there is no tolerance for hate crime here in the UK.
Well, in the last few minutes, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, he has condemned incidents of abuse and hatred, calling for rapid reaction to them. Will that help at all? A Prime Minister who has resigned, who isn't going to be able to look after this in the months to come?
I think we do need statements from politicians from all different inclinations, those from different sides of this debate, to come out and be very clear that hate crimes, regardless of one's background, regardless of one's politics, are not acceptable here in our country.
And very briefly, Mikad, what's your advice to people from any community that isn't white British right now feeling vulnerable?
Whoever you are, if there is hate crime that you see, that you experience, please report it to the police, because what we need is everyone to come together so we can build a stronger, more cohesive society. OK,
Mikdad Versi, thank you very much for coming to talk to me. Thank you. Well, there's still much more to come this lunchtime. It is a big day for British sport. Before the footy, the tennis fans are gathering for the start of Wimbledon. But first, a teenager injured when a roller coaster derailed at a theme park in North Lanarkshire says she thought she was going to die. Katie McArdle was one of 10 people taken to hospital after the accident. 3 children are still in a serious condition. Sally Biddulph has the latest.
Oh my God. Shock and disbelief after a roller coaster full of people, mainly children, derails and plunges 20 feet to the ground.
Guys, the best thing you can do is back away and give them some space.
Staff and eyewitnesses rushed to the scene to help. Ewan McLean was in the queue with his daughter waiting to ride the tsunami roller coaster for a 4th time. He described the immediate aftermath.
There were a couple of people jumping over barriers just to get out. Some people ran straight to the crash scene to go and help. For that, they should be absolutely commended. My first reaction was to just, first of all, stop Macy from being caught up in any kind of stampede that was going on, and then just to get her out of there as quickly as possible without seeing anything else. I felt she had seen enough, frankly.
Almost 24 hours on from the crash, 2 adults and 7 children remain in hospital. 3 of the children are in a serious condition. Teenager Katie McArdle escaped with just a broken wrist, while her boyfriend is thought to have dislocated his knee. After she was discharged, she posted on Facebook, "I have never been so scared in my entire life. Honestly thought I was going to die. Sitting in that carriage upside down with everyone screaming. Turning round and not seeing William beside me was the worst." Another little boy, thought to be just 11, is reported to have undergone 8 hours of surgery to save his arm and hand. As treatment of the injured continues, a major investigation is underway at M&D's amusement park in Motherwell. Police have said initial findings suggest the suspended gondolas detached as they went round a bend, but the reason why is not yet known. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
Let's turn then to a big day for British sport, and England fans are back in the south of France ahead of England's next match in the Euros. They face Iceland tonight in the last 16. Our sports editor Steve Scott is at the stadium in Nice. Steve, surely England shouldn't have any problems getting past Iceland?
Well, of course not, Nina. But having said that, England's record over 90 minutes in the knockout stages of tournament football has been pretty poor since 1966. But then you'd like to think with the players at England's disposal, the players who are out trying to break the boredom today, walking along the Nice seafront, would have enough in them to beat a nation with the population that's roughly equivalent to that of Leicester's. However, they have got this far. They have got this far on merit, and there is no way that Wayne Rooney or the rest of his team will be underestimating them tonight.
We know it'll be a tough game. We've watched their games, and I've watched their game back since against Austria as well, and they're a very well organised team, work hard for each other and defend well, so we will have to be at our best to win and give everything we can.
England fans can expect 6 changes tonight, the headlines being Harry Kane is back, so is Raheem Sterling. The manager, Roy Hodgson, knows that if he loses tonight, it's the end of England's tournament, but it's also the end of his time as England manager.
Steve Scott, thank you. And that game is live on ITV tonight. Kick-off is at 8, coverage starts at 7. It's also a big day for tennis fans as the Wimbledon fortnight begins with defending champion Novak Djokovic taking on Britain's James Ward. Britain's best hope, Andy Murray, doesn't play until tomorrow. Our sports correspondent Ian Payne is there for the first day of the world's most famous tennis tournament.
Thank you very much. Day one at the Wimbledon Championships, another 40,000 spectator full house
and we're set for a rain-free day. Play's been underway since 11:30 this morning, and the action on the show courts began at 1 o'clock. First up on centre, the defending champion Novak Djokovic, and a Brit, James Ward, 176 places below him in the world rankings. But even Ward's most ardent fans expect a swift exit.
I guess he'll give it his best shot. The crowd will be behind him, so we'll have to wait and see.
Do you give Ward any chance?
Not really.
What about you? Do you think Ward can win?
We're not British.
That's a no, isn't it? There are in fact 15 other British players in action in the men's singles and women's singles this week. Many of them guided in the past by Judy Murray. This morning, doing her bit with the youngsters again. Her son Andy plays tomorrow against another Brit, Liam Brodie.
It's a pity that's happened, but that's just the way it goes. I think that Liam Brodie, it's a great opportunity for him. He'll be playing on a big court. It's his first Wimbledon, and he has nothing to lose.
And in keeping with the mum theme, among the spectators today, the Williams sisters' mother. Venus is in action today, Serena tomorrow. And how about this? If Serena were to win here again, despite an increase in prize money because of the post-Brexit exchange rate, when she converts it to dollars, she'll actually earn less than last year. It'll still be worth more than $2.5 million, though. Ian Payne, ITV News, Wimbledon.
Let's return to our top story in the fallout since Brexit. The Chancellor, George Osborne, says the UK is in a strong position to face the future and appeared to backtrack on his earlier statement that Britain would need an emergency budget if we voted to leave. And in the past few minutes, it's been confirmed that a new Conservative leader should be in place by September the 2nd, following David Cameron's resignation on Friday. David Cameron himself will address the Commons for the first time since Brexit later this afternoon. Well, you can follow all these developments, including the Prime Minister in the Commons, at 3:30 online, itv.com/news. Mark Austin will be in Westminster with the latest, with Mary Nightingale for the ITV Evening News here at 6:30. From us, though, bye for now.